In my experience, a lot of clients are quite cut off socially, so we're providing really a kind of social lifeline, you know, literally in some extent, some cases, people that have no contact and really need someone to talk about things that they wouldn't normally be able to talk about. So, you know, in that case, in other cases, people are living, should we say, normal lives, you know, family, jobs, you know, quite settled, and yet there's something not quite right, something not addressed from their past. And that's just an example of the kind of range of clients that we can work with. I was working with people with drug and alcohol addiction, and my recollection of that time is that very often, although we were talking about drug and alcohol, on many instances the underlying, you know, causes and dynamics seem to relate to things like child abuse and things that aren't normally spoken about. You know, I mean, very often now in treatment programs, drug and alcohol treatment programs, people can talk about drug and alcohol, but they find it very difficult to address a group and talk about, you know, their sexual abuse. So, you know, that was something I was aware of from that time on my placement. You know, that there was a specialist area here that kind of needed addressing. I would imagine that there's certainly stigmas related to male sexual abuse that would make it difficult for people to come in. I think issues around shame, embarrassment and guilt, I think, are probably a lot more prevalent with men, because I think it's just off the radar a bit. You know, it's not something that really gets spoken about much. As a man, there's all the social expectations of being kind of strong and, you know, not showing your emotions and being able to fend for yourself. And I think that contributes to it being quite difficult for men to want to come forward and talk about that sort of thing. Just in the public conscience, it just doesn't seem to be something that's entertained in the same way that it is with female victims. And I think that's changing. I've got a sense that's changing. It's changing, but I would say also, if you look at any mainstream news story, i.e. BBC, whatever, and the issue and the headline relates to child abuse or rape, they 9 out of 10 times it's talking about a woman. Yeah. You know, even if the story, even if the background of the story is addressing it generically in terms, you know, not referring to sex, the language and just the way the articles and the media is presented, it's definitely biased towards female victims. I can't see that one happening overnight. I think it's to do with cultural values and norms, and these things I think happen generation by generation, and they're to do with you know, landmark cases and just things that happen historically that seem to filter through into the public consciousness, and then you look back in, you know, 40, 50 years and you think, well, how could we think that, you know, 50 years ago, whether, you know, women's liberation, you know, slavery, whatever, all these things are things that we kind of look back on, I think, in hindsight, and we kind of wonder how we used to think that way. And I think our perceptions of sexual violence against men will be the same.